Hello guys, so today I'm going to be talking about my practice regime. One quick thing I want to mention first is, obviously this isn't my normal camera setup. I may or may not do any playing at the end of this video, and if I do, it won't necessarily be the best sound quality because I'll just be recording it on my phone, as I don't have a proper way to actually record the sound right now, unfortunately. So just wanted to quickly throw that out there, and apologies for that. But yeah, my practice regime. So I don't actually have a specific practice regime. In fact, my brain really hates rules. It can't stand them, especially stupid, unnecessary ones. It's like it knows they're unnecessary, so it goes, yeah, let's not go along with that on purpose. And I have to kind of then I have to fight it, and it just makes the whole experience really unenjoyable, which is not really the point of it. So, yeah, basically, I just play for enjoyment. I play whenever and wherever I feel like it, as long as there's an instrument available. It's really about, well, I think playing for enjoyment is a good way to do it anyway, because when you play for enjoyment, you can't really go backwards from it. It's all playing time, and it's all learning, and it's all refreshing your memory, and it's all muscle memory and all sorts like that. But I don't think you really have to have a set regime to practice in order to stay good at an instrument. I think if the only time I would necessarily do something like that is if there's something coming up fairly soon, or something massively important where I know it's going to be quite taxing and I'm going to have to put quite a lot of thought into it. That's the only time I'll sit down and practice like every day in a religious kind of way, even if I don't necessarily feel like it. But even then, I'll kind of try to feel for the best time and space that my brain is in to actually do that in a day. But either way, even if I don't necessarily feel in the right brain space, I'll always try to do it anyway if I feel that I need to, because of course there's no way, if I've got something important coming up, I would never ever let myself let that person down. I just couldn't do it. It's like, if I've got something important coming up, I get this feeling here, and even when I go to sleep, it's like, don't forget you've got that, don't forget you've got this, and I'm like, yes, I know, I need to sleep. And it's go, no, but this bass line is this, remember this, while I'm trying to sleep, and my brain's like visualising it constantly, and I have the songs in my head all the time, which, although can be tiring, is really, in a way, quite helpful, because it helps me remember it. And if you watched my previous video, which is called How I Gain Inspiration, I go more in, it kind of ties in with this one. These two are kind of like sister videos. It ties in more with my brain pattern and how I work, and how I get it to, I harness it to do what I want it to do, if that makes sense. But yeah, aside from that, I don't really have a set practice regime. Like, I don't sit and go, right, yes, I practice from 1 till 3 every day, no matter what, and I practice scales, and I practice this, and I practice that, because my brain doesn't work that way. If your brain works that way, that is great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's no right or wrong way to practice or to do music. If it feels right to you, then great. You can't really go wrong with that. But yeah, my brain just doesn't really work that way, so I'll sit and play for enjoyment as and when I feel like it. I'll play what I want to. Sometimes I'll play songs, or sometimes I'll just sit and improvise, or sometimes I'll just noodle around. Again, I don't really like to make rules of what I should practice, but there are certain times where my brain will go, ooh, I like that new thing, I really want to learn that, and I'll actually want to sit and practice it. So I'll go through a phase where it'll be stuck on this one thing, and it'll go, whenever I pick it up, I end up going over it anyway. And it can be semi-religiously, but it's not because I've forced myself to do it. It's because my brain is at a point where it actually wants to do that. And I think for me, that's what works best for me. So, for example, when I was first starting out, what I did was I learned songs first, because for me, that was the best way to make everything make sense and give it context. So, obviously you've got your right hand. It helped with my right hand, it helped with my left hand, it helped me actually learning and remembering songs, it helped me with listening for the bass line, because I did a lot of it by ear, and basically everything I do is by ear because I just find it easier. I'm not good with numbers, I'm dyscalculic, so I can read tabs, but it's just quicker for me to just go, it's that. But so it helped my ear, it helped me get used to playing with a band, even though it was just along with songs on a computer or the TV. But it gave everything context, and then I started to hear things in other songs, and kind of like, I would hear a certain pattern, and my brain would go, I know that shape, what they're playing, I can take a good guess now without even having played it, that it's going to be something like this shape. And it started out like I would be semi-right some of the time, but that was the beginnings of it. And it's now at a point where if I listen to something by ear, I can hear a certain shapes or whatever, and I'll kind of already know when I listen to something how it's played. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense, because you kind of, the more you learn things by ear, the more you get to know and recognise, and you memorise things like what a major triad sounds like, and you know how that's played, and you'll hear it in a song without having to be told that it's a major triad, for example. And the same thing goes with like finger picking techniques and where the mutes are in songs and stuff like that, because a lot of people tend to at first not hear muted notes in bass, but once you start hearing them and you discover that they're a thing, you start hearing them everywhere. And I think if I had sat down, for me personally, if I had sat down and done everything via a book, I wouldn't necessarily be able to hear this stuff and recognise it in the way that I do now. Because now I'm at the point where in 2017 I learned 37 songs over a day, which is not a bragging thing. Literally anybody can do that. And I think if that's what you can do, if you listen to your brain, you can do that. Like, if you allow yourself to learn in the way that works best for you, then you can literally do anything. So if my practice regime sounds nothing like how your brain works, that's great, because hopefully that's another thing to tick off the list and go, right, that doesn't work for me, so on to trying to figure out and learn the next thing that does work for me. So yeah, and if this does sound like it'll work for you, then again, hopefully it's of some help. But another thing is, like, if I do sit down and learn something, let's say a certain, I'll think, I haven't really learned anything of this genre for a while and I really want to, then sometimes I'll sit and learn certain things in certain genres, or I'll figure out certain right hand techniques, left hand techniques, or I feel like my left hand could be a little bit more dexterous or a bit less spidery, then I'll sit down and do that. But I'll only do that if, one, I want to do that, and two, I feel it's semi-important for me to do that, if that makes sense. Yeah. Hopefully this is making some kind of sense. I really don't have a specific thing, but Another thing I did sit down and learn kind of religiously when first starting out was the notes on the fretboard. And again, you can get by without them, but it's helpful if you are able to memorise at least some of them. There are certain areas of the neck that even for me are still grey areas, and I do go over them. But again, I'm not the best with letters and numbers and the more kind of logical side of things. I'm more of an artistic, untangible side of things. That just seems to be how my brain works. But it's still kind of important. If you want to learn that stuff, then definitely do that. And the other thing is, I think when I was first starting out, that I didn't really sit and learn masses of, like, what I did learn helped me play with feel, because I wasn't consciously trying to be the best or to kind of learn the most technical stuff in the world just for the sake of that. It was just because I liked it. And I think if you can play with feel, then definitely hold on to that, because it's really important, and it's difficult, if not impossible, to teach fully. I do think you can say certain things and help people think in a different way that opens them up to be able for themselves to help themselves play with feel. But you can't necessarily sit down in a lesson and go, right, to play with feel, you just do this and that. Because it's not really, it's that kind of intangible thing that you just kind of, you can be opened up to it, but it's you that has to let it in, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's pretty much my practice regime. Is I'll just sit and play what I want to play, when I want to play it, and how I want to play it. Because I don't really work particularly well if I set certain rules for myself, unless there's an important thing for it. And the thing is as well, when you're learning songs or learning anything, I've found, at least for me, if I'm learning something and it's quite taxing and I'm struggling with it and I keep tripping over it and I get more and more frustrated with it, then if I carry on playing that, I kind of don't get any better at it necessarily. But if I go away from it and concentrate on something else, even if I just go and play something else unrelated, or if I just go and watch a video or something, anything but that, I often find that when I come back to it, I can just do it, or pretty much do it immediately, even though I haven't practiced it any more than I did since I left. So it's almost like your brain has to subconsciously process things, and I know mine is always processing things, and kind of like give it space to let it take it in, and then the part of your brain that is focusing on the music and the intangible side of it will kind of communicate with the physical muscle memory side of it, and they'll kind of link up and go, I get it now. And then when you go back to it, your brain and your fingers are connected and you can do it, or nearly do it. So I find that instead of forcing myself to keep on doing something relentlessly is a lot quicker for me to progress, because forcing myself to do it is not conducive to actually progressing necessarily, as backwards as that sounds. And I think stuff like that can be important to keep in mind if you ever feel yourself getting frustrated or falling out of love with the instrument. Just kind of take some time to remember why you do it in the first place and actually allow it to do that, because it's just so important. And I think it's a shame if people feel pigeonholed into certain rules and expectations that they think are in the music scene that they have to follow, because it can be really easy to not feel like you can follow your own brain pattern. but it's really important to, so always keep that in mind. Because another thing I did whenever I learned something, I've never really thought right from the start before I even played. I thought if I saw someone doing something amazing on bass or anything, I would go, well, they can do that, and they're a human, so that means it's humanly possible, and I'm a human, so there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do that. So if I try, then eventually I'll get there because they were able to get there, and if I keep at it in a way that works for me, then I know that I'll get there. But if I keep telling myself, I can't do that, I'll never be able to do that because I'm not that person, then I've found it much harder to... It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. You almost have to just think, well, they've done it, so eventually I'll be able to do it if I keep going at it. And it's generally true. Sorry. But yeah, it's just stuff like that. My thought process at whatever point in time is a big part of my practice regime as well. So I just kind of have to go with the flow, because like I mentioned in the How I Gain Inspiration video, it depends what kind of phase my brain is in as to what my regime is. Even though it's not a planned thing, it's constantly changing and going up and down. And as I mentioned in that other video as well, my brain is never not thinking about music, really. It's always in this part of my brain, even if this front part is on something else. It's always concentrating and taking things in. So in a way, my practice regime doesn't end, but it doesn't really necessarily start either, because like if I'm always kind of visualizing songs and hearing them in my head anyway, and that is just a subconscious thing that my brain does all the time, and it's forever translating things into music, because to me music is my first language. So anything I take in from the outside world will always subconsciously be translated into music anyway. Again, I go more into detail in that in the other video, but I felt it was kind of relevant for this one as well. Yeah, there really is no right or wrong way to do this, but I thought I'd put this out as I've been asked, but also because if you feel the same way and your brain works the same way, then hopefully something in this video will be helpful, but also it will make you feel less alone as well, because sometimes it can be kind of lonely to work in a bit of a strange manner. But yeah, so basically, unless there's something I specifically have to learn that I know will be quite taxing and it's really important, then I'll sit down and do it fairly religiously. But aside from that, I literally just play for enjoyment, and it all kind of ties in. You can't not improve from that anyway. So in my opinion, that's for me the best way to practice, basically, is to kind of not secretly practice and trick my brain into thinking I'm not practicing, but I am. Because everything is playing time. Anytime you play, that is technically practice. Your brain's always going to be making connections of what is the right and wrong kind of thing. Like when you make a mistake, it's going to go, I know that was wrong, so I think I need to do this to correct it. And then when you do it again, you put that into practice, and it all comes together anyway, even if you haven't necessarily consciously sat down just for the sake of learning that. So yeah, that's basically my practice regime. I don't really have one. I just kind of go with what the universe tells me and what music tells me. And yeah, but if you haven't seen that other video, How I Gain Inspiration, again, it ties in quite a lot with this one, so it might be worth a watch if you fancy watching it. But yeah, hopefully this made some kind of sense and answered some questions. I was debating whether to start doing a Q&A occasionally, so let me know in the comments if that would be something you'd be interested in, and feel free to send me any questions as well for that if you have any that you'd like to ask. Aside from that, I do have a Patreon. It's not got tiers or anything like that. It's literally, there's no minimum price. You just pay as little or as much as you like. It's just to help support the channel and to help me be able to keep doing what I love and creating content for you guys and lessons and hopefully helping in some way. But yeah, there's no pressure either way. Just thought I'd mention it, just if that's something that interests you. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it made some kind of sense. Massive thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.